Connie, and today we are doing beef Wellington. So whenever you're making a dish, you need to start off with your mise en place, right? So mise en place basically means everything in its place. It's a term we use in the industry very, very commonly. And it basically just includes everything from equipment to ingredients that you're gonna need to make a dish successfully. Let's go over our equipment. So first of all, you're gonna need a cutting board, right? So I got this beautiful wooden cutting board. You're gonna need two different kinds of knives. You're gonna need a normal chef's knife, right? This is gonna be for our prep. And then once our Wellington is nice and cooked off, that puff pastry is gonna be nice and crusty. So we really suggest using a serrated knife to kind of cut through that puff pastry to make that really nice, beautiful, clean cut, okay? You're gonna need a bowl. So we got this beautiful mixing bowl here. And we're gonna mix our crepe batter into there in just a sec. You're gonna need a ladle. This is a 2-ounce ladle. Okay, and if you have a ladle and it's not 2 ounces, that's okay. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna measure out 2 ounces of crepe. So if you don't have that 2-ounce ladle, you can also use a 1/4 cup as well. That's also like a little fun fact about that. So go ahead and grab either that ladle or that 1/4 cup. And speaking of, you actually will need a 1/4 cup. So we're gonna grab that anyways. You're gonna need a pair of tongs. Got these beautiful tongs right here. And this is gonna help us kind of move our meat around as we sear off that Wellington. You're gonna need a pair of scissors, all right? So I got these beautiful scissors right here. You're gonna need a pastry brush and a spatula, all right? And whenever you're kind of working with pastry dough, you kind of need a lot of tools, right? All these tools kind of used for different things. So you need both of those ingredients or equipment right there. You're gonna need a whisk. This is gonna help us mix up that crepe batter. I got myself here a metal spatula, a little larger spatula, and this is what's gonna kind of help flip our crepes when we put them into the pan. We're gonna need a rolling pin. So I got this beautiful rolling pin right here. And to land and bake our beef Wellington, I've gone ahead and I've lined my beautiful sheet tray here. Got a 1/4 sheet tray with a little bit of aluminum foil. All right, so just a little bit just to kind of coat. And that's what's gonna kind of help us get that nice crust on the bottom of our pastry. So using that aluminum foil as a little bit of a heat conductor is gonna really get that nice crust on the bottom of your beef Wellington. And you'll see that when it's done. And then moving on over to my stove cam, I got a gorgeous large cast iron pan here. So we're gonna sear off our Wellington in that cast iron pan. I have a small sauce pot. We're gonna actually make a beurre monte that we're gonna put into our crepe batter, which is gonna give it like a little bit more richness, a little more lusciousness, kind of a fun trick when making crepe batter. And you're also gonna need a non-stick pan. So I have this 10-inch non-stick pan right here. You are also gonna need a little bit of plastic wrap, so kind of have that plastic wrap on hand, okay? And if you have anything that's about 18 inches, that's preferred, but you can always kind of double up on that plastic wrap as well. So just kind of find that plastic wrap and just have it on hand. That is all of the equipment that we're gonna need. So we're gonna move right on into our ingredients, okay? So we are gonna use a beef tenderloin, right? So I have this beautiful 1-pound beef tenderloin. Okay, this is just kind of like the center part. So it's nice and gorgeous, really great consistency in the width, and it's just asking to be rolled in puff pastry. You're gonna need a bunch of chives. All right, we're gonna make chive crepes, so you definitely need those chives. We're gonna need a little bit of mustard, and this is what's gonna kind of give us a little bit of a spicy flavor to our beef. We're gonna need this beautiful truffle jus made in-house here at Truffle Shuffle. Gorgeous stuff. You can actually see the bits of truffle in this, so absolutely delicious. We're gonna sear our beef in a little bit of canola oil. So we got this beautiful canola oil right here, and this is the oil we use because it has a higher smoke point. So that basically means we can just get really nice and hot so we can sear off that beef, right? You're gonna need some whole eggs. I got these whole eggs right here. This is gonna be for our crepe batter. And we're also gonna need a little bit of milk, all right? So I got milk and whole eggs for my crepe batter. And we have a little bit of flour here. So I got this flour hanging out here for our batter as well. We're gonna need a little bit of butter. All right, we're gonna cook our beautiful crepes in butter because it tastes better, it's true. We got a little bit of white button mushrooms right here. This is gonna be for our we're gonna make a little bit of a mushroom Madeira sort of jus sauce to finish our beef Wellington. Very classic move is to make that Wellington, put a little beef jus on there. Delicious. And speaking of that sauce, you're gonna need just a little bit of Madeira on hand, or if you have cognac or any sort of whiskey, that'll work just as well. We're just gonna deglaze our mushrooms when we caramelize them in just a minute. And of course, we're gonna need a little bit of that Balinese truffle salt. I got that Balinese truffle salt coming at you right there. Boom. All right. And we've also got a little bit of mushroom duxelle. Okay, so mushroom duxelle is basically mushrooms, shallot, and sherry vinegar blitzed together, and then you put it into a dry pan, and all you do is you let all of the moisture come out of the mushrooms, and what you're left with is sort of like this mushroom pate sort of situation. And this is what's gonna coat our beef Wellington before we roll it in the puff pastry. And what it does is it creates a beautiful flavor, and two, it actually helps kind of keep those juices inside. And you'll see what I mean when we wrap this Wellington. It's gonna be delicious. And then last but not least, we're gonna need some puff pastry, right? So I have this packet of puff pastry, and I've gone ahead and I've left it in the fridge, okay? Because you wanna keep your puff pastry cold. So I have it in my fridge. This is about a pound, okay? And I'm gonna keep it in the fridge until we need it, okay? So that's gonna kind of help keep that butter, right? There's lots of layers of butter in that puff pastry. And it's gonna kind of keep that butter nice and cold so that it can kind of stay and not render and get kind of liquefied. So you kind of keep it in the fridge until you need it. And we'll kind of talk about that as we go. All right, so we have our ingredients, we have our equipment, we got our chefs out there. All right, so if you're excited to make this beef Wellington, enjoy that candy cap Manhattan, let's get right into it. All right, so whenever you're making a baked product, right, you always want to make sure that first and foremost, you turn that oven on. All right, so turn that oven on to 375. And if you have a convection oven out there, if your house oven has convection, go ahead and turn that convection on. That's really gonna kind of help you get that really nice, even convection cooking. All right, and then we're gonna get right into it. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab my beef tenderloin, right? And I've gone ahead and I have tapped it with a little bit of paper towel, right? Because you wanna get that nice sear on it. And I'm gonna go ahead and just plop that onto my plate, getting that excess meat off. All right. And I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna turn on my pan. Okay, so I'm gonna turn on that pan and I'm gonna sear this on high, okay? So turning on my pan, I have my beef tenderloin ready to be seasoned. But we're gonna grab that canola oil and we're going to add it to our pan. And we just need a little bit, all right? We just need to sear this off, right? And we're gonna bring up our canola oil and our cast iron up together. And you can really see that canola oil is nice and thick, right? But as it gets hotter, it's gonna kind of change in consistency, right? It's gonna kind of look like water. And that's a really great indicator that your oil is ready to go. And then another great indicator is that you're seeing little flurries of smoke. That just means your pan is nice and hot. And it's very important when you're searing meat is to make sure your pan is nice and hot so you don't get any stickage, right? And patting that meat down with that paper towel is also gonna help with that stickage. So just little fun facts about all of that meaty goodness. And so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna grab that Balinese truffle salt. And what I like to do, because these beef tenderloins are a little bit of a rounder shape, what I like to do is I kind of get the sides here, right? Get both sides. And then I kind of put the salt on the plate and I just kind of roll that steak on the plate, right? Make sure I got it nice and salted up out a little bit more here. And just get those sides just really nice and crusted, right? Oh my gosh, so good. And so what you got here is this beautiful, beautiful steak. Nice and seared off. Boom.
Oh yeah.
All right. And now you can see, I'm gonna go ahead and wash my hands real quick. And you can see that my pan is getting nice and hot. And if your pan kind of has a, not as completely even, what I like to do is kind of move that oil around, right? Make sure that oil gets nice and all over that pan. You can see the consistency of that oil has changed. I got a nice smoking going on. And so I got my tongs ready to go. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna sear off each side of this tenderloin, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and roll around. And you can see my pan was nice and hot. And so I know that I was ready to sear, okay? And we're not really trying to get a crust on this. We're just trying to get a nice sear so that our steak has a nice roasted flavor, okay? So I'm coming around here and I'm gonna go about 30 seconds on each side, okay? So I'm kind of letting this get nice and letting that sear get nice and developed. And I'm just gonna wait until I got this beautiful crust, just like that. Just a crust ever so slight. You can see I'm getting just a little bit of color here, right? And because this steak is a little bit rounder, you can go ahead and just hold it And you're just trying to get all sides of this steak nice and seared off, all right? Nice sort of even crust going on, but I don't have, it's not a heavy sear, right? So what we're doing is we're just creating that nice roasted flavor. We're also kind of capturing all of the juices into our meat so that when we roast it whole, all those juices are kind of already condensed into that crust, right? That's another reason why you sear off your meat. And so we want to make sure that the pastry dough has time to cook with this. So you want to kind of make sure that you're not overcooking your steak in the pan. You're just getting that crust, and that's all you need to do at that point, okay? And so now that we have our steak on our plate and it's kind of chilling out, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna grab that mustard, okay? Grab that little thing of mustard. It's the cutest thing you've ever seen. And grab that pastry brush, okay? And we're going to go ahead and cover this with this mustard, all right? And this is just gonna kind of give us this beautiful flavor of that kind of spicy sort of flavor. Horseradish works really well at this point too. But we're gonna add this mustard while the meat is hot. So it can kind of capture and get all of that kind of hot mustard and really, really absorb all of that mustard, right? So we're coming on over here, getting all of that mustard on there. I'm gonna go ahead and use those tongs again to kind of flip and get that last side, right? You wanna make sure you get all sides of that mustard, or that beef tenderloin with that mustard. And this is also kind of help it cool down a little bit, right? Because as we add this meat, we want to make sure it's not hot when we add it to the puff pastry dough. Because we want to make sure that puff pastry dough is nice and cooled so it can bake, all right? And so go ahead, and if you only have one pastry brush, go ahead and give this a rinse. We're going to use this pastry brush one more time, right? So I'm going to go ahead, give that a quick rinse in just a sec. And once you've gotten your beef just completely smothered in that mustard, go ahead and pop that into your icebox, okay? So popping that into my refrigerator. Let that cool down, all right? Now we have our beef seared off, and while it's cooling down, this is a perfect time to start making our crepes, all right? So go ahead and grab those whole eggs and that milk, and we're actually gonna save about a tablespoon of these eggs to use as our wash, okay? Use as our egg wash. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and kind of eye out 1 tablespoon. But if you're out there and you're not feeling confident about that eye, go ahead and use a tablespoon measurement, okay? And I'm just going to reserve just that 1 tablespoon of egg yolk, and this is gonna be my egg wash, okay? We're gonna refer to this as your egg wash. This is what's gonna glue our puff pastry to our Wellington, okay? And then go ahead, and since we're kind of reserving some stuff, grab that AP flour, okay? And grab that 1/4 cup. And we're gonna go ahead and just reserve a 1/4 cup of this flour as our bench flour, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and grab that 1/4 cup, and we're just gonna put that to the side, all right? And so now we have just what's left of that flour. All right, easy. And then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna make that beurre monté, all right? And beurre monté is just simply butter and water, but we need to emulsify, right? If you add butter and water, it's just gonna kind of break. So the move with that is go ahead and go over to your small sauce pot, and you're gonna grab a little bit of water, okay? So we're gonna grab a little bit of water, and we're gonna put about a tablespoon into this pot, all right? So we're making that beurre monté, and we're gonna emulsify that butter into the water. And so the best way to do that is add a tablespoon of water to that pot, and we're just gonna bring it up to a boil, okay? We're just gonna bring that little tablespoon up to a boil. And beurre monté, we're just gonna do a 1-to-1 ratio, right? So we got a tablespoon of that water, and now we're gonna add a tablespoon of butter, okay? So go ahead and grab that butter, and luckily it has that really handy dandy ruler right here. And I'm gonna go ahead and just grab that 1 tablespoon, right? And my butter is now up to a boil. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn that right off, right? It's gonna be pretty quick, right? There's not much water in there. And grab that whisk, and you're gonna add that butter to that water, and you're just gonna whisk it in, all right? So you can see, as I kind of whisk that butter in, it starts to just really get nice and emulsified. and that heat of the water really kind of helps that butter get nice and melted. And this is just like as you make any other sort of emulsification, right? You slowly incorporate that fat into that nice emulsification. And so because I kept that butter in a nice big form, it's kind of melting all together and slowly, so it gets nice and emulsified. All right, so coming on over here, whisking it up, making sure all of that butter. And I'm just using the residual heat. All right, now I just brought that water up to a boil, and I'm just using that residual heat to get that beautiful, beautiful butter nice and melted. And you can see I have this beautiful emulsified beurre monte going on. Look at that, gorgeous. All right, so putting that to the side. Now we have our beurre monte ready to go. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start making our crepe batter, okay? So grabbing that medium bowl, keeping that whisk close at hand, go ahead and grab that milk and the rest of those egg yolks, okay? So we're coming on over to our bowl. I'm gonna add all those whole eggs, right? Making sure that I have that tablespoon set to the side for our egg wash, right? And we're also gonna add all of our milk, okay? So we're bringing all together our wet ingredients and making sure those are nice and incorporated. And then we're going to slowly add in our dry. So I'm coming on over here, making sure that these are nice and homogenized, nice and together. And then I'm gonna go ahead and hook myself up. A friend, go ahead and grab that nest from that towel. And this is the flour that we reserved a 1/4 cup from. And then we're just going to slowly incorporate our dry into our wet, all right? So you can see I'm kind of going nice and slow, making sure I'm not overworking that starch, and just getting this beautiful, beautiful crepe batter. Have that beurre monte right, making sure that beurre monte is still nice and warm. We're just going to add that to our crepe batter. This is just a nice way to kind of add some butter, that butter flavor, right? But keeping it nice and liquid form so that the butter is nice and melted. And now we have a little bit of that luscious, luscious crepe batter. All right, and so we always want to season our batters, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and grab that Bolognese truffle salt. And we're gonna give ourselves a nice pinch, okay? So coming on over here, give myself a nice pinch of that beautiful Bolognese truffle salt. So that nice crystallization, right? Those beautiful truffles, that porcini powder in there. And I'm just gonna raise the roof, and I'm just gonna season from up high. Okay, I'm gonna make it rain into that crepe batter, right? About a teaspoon of that salt, and I'm just gonna whisk that in. Perfect. So we are almost done with our crepe batter, but we just need one more thing, okay? So we have our eggs in there, we have our milk, our beurre monte, and now we've gone ahead and seasoned that up. But we still need chives, right? We need chives for our chive crepe. So go ahead and grab those chives. I'm gonna fold up my towel real quick, keeping it clean, keeping it tight. And go ahead and grab those bunches of chives, okay? So we got this beautiful bunch of chives here. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna give these a beautiful slice, okay? We're gonna make these nice and beautiful, these nice little rings of chive. And what I like to do is I kind of take that chive out, and you can either use the rubber band that it comes with, right, to kind of hold your chives together. But if it didn't come with a rubber band, what you can do is you can take that paper towel, and keeping a wet, moist paper towel on your herbs is great because it's gonna keep your herbs nice and fresh. So we always suggest if you ever have herbs at home, keeping it nice and next to a moist paper towel is gonna really, really help your herbs longevity in your fridge. And so what I like to do too as well is kind of use that paper towel, right? Reuse, recycle, and get it nice and skinny. And then what you can do is if you don't have that rubber band, what you can do is you can take the top of those chives and fold it into, roll it on up, and then you got yourself a really nice handle, okay? So we got this beautiful handle going on. And that way when you do this, nothing moves, right? Nothing's moving around. Perfect. And so what I like to do is I like to trim off the edge of those chives, right? And that way we just have a nice kind of even layer. Nice even way to start chopping. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna slice these chives, okay? And so I'll just kind of show you a side view. What you're doing is you're kind of keeping the front of your knife connected to the board, and we're just gonna slice, all right? You see how I'm kind of slicing forward? Because if you chop your herbs, what happens is you kind of bruise them, and then you lose all of that natural flavor, okay? So coming on down here, and I'm just going to keep slicing these chives. And you can see as I'm moving my knife towards my non-cutting hand, I'm making very, very small movements. So that way, I get these beautiful, beautiful little cuts of chive. And what's great about chive is that they're already naturally cylindrical, so you're already getting those natural little rings of chive. And so you can see I'm just constantly slicing. And you can see I have almost no green on my board, right? Because I'm just treating these chives with a little bit of TLC, a little tender love and care. And then I'm just going to utilize all these chives. And then once you get to your little paper towel, you can go ahead and remove that out of your way. And the great thing about chives is that it's completely edible. So we can chop these all the way down. 100% yield, which is always lovely. Making sure your fingertips are nice and behind your knuckles, right? You can see my little chef claw, keeping my tips nice and safe. And I'm just gonna slice all the way down. Really utilize all of that beautiful chive. Perfect. Awesome. And so once you got all those beautiful chives nice and chopped, we're gonna go ahead and you're gonna put half of that into your batter. All right, so I'm gonna take half of that beautiful chive and just pop it right into my batter, okay? And then that second half, we're just going to save for garnish. So I'm coming on over here, I'm just gonna grab the rest of those chives. So we got half in the batter, half for later. All right, perfect. Awesome. And then cleaning up my board a little bit, because always cleaning as you go. I'm gonna go ahead and get that nice and out of our way. Perfect. All right. And so once your crepe is nice and chived out, we've gone ahead and chived it out, give that one last mix, and then we're ready to get cooking on our crepes, okay? So keeping that whisk, getting out of our way. And I've gone ahead and I'm gonna use that 2-ounce ladle, but if you want, you can use that 1/4 cup, right? So I got my 2-ounce ladle right here, and I'm gonna come on over to my stove, and I'm going to turn on my pan to a nice medium, okay? So I have this induction burner, but if you have a gas stove out there, just try and find that nice medium, okay? Because we wanna make sure that the crepes have time to cook, but we don't wanna get them too brown. We're gonna kinda somewhere in the middle. And we're gonna add a little bit of butter to each one. So we're probably gonna make about 3 to 4 crepes, depending on how much butter you have. And so what I like to do is I kind of like to measure out my butter when I'm making crepes. And so the way that I do that is I hit that 1 tablespoon mark again, right? 1 tablespoon. And I just kind of cut it right down. And then I take that tablespoon, right? And I'm going to go ahead and cut it into quarters. Okay, I'm gonna go 1 and then 2. And so now what I have are these perfectly measured out cubes of butter. So that way I know how much butter I need for each round of crepe. All right, so you can see 1, 2, 3, and 4, okay? Easy money. This is just like being really sciencey and nerdy about this. But this way, you know you won't have too much fat when you cook your crepe, all right? So my pan's getting nice and warmed up, right? And then you kind of know that your pan is ready when that butter starts to melt, all right? So we're coming on over here, and you can see that butter is just starting to sizzle, and that's exactly what we're looking for, okay? So we got that butter kind of moving around. And then what I like to do, because you don't want any large chunks of butter, is I'll take a paper towel, and you can reuse this paper towel, and I just kind of move that butter around while kind of wiping and getting that butter nice and evenly distributed. And so you don't have any real chunks, right? And you're absorbing just a little bit of that butter, but now you can see I have this nice sort of even layer, and we can reuse this paper towel, right? We want to reuse, recycle. And so now that I have that nice frothiness going on, I'm gonna go ahead and grab that first ladle of crepe and add it to my pan. And to ensure the thinness, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna move that crepe around, right? And just get that nice, even layer. Look at that. Perfect. And so now you got that nice crepe, right? And that butter is really gonna help you indicate when your pan is nice and ready. And honestly, once you find that sweet spot for that crepe, you're just gonna keep that temperature right there. Okay, you don't wanna change the temperature because you found that sweet spot. And then you're gonna come and let these crepes just kind of set, all right? So what I like to do is kind of get the edges here, clean up that crepe a little bit. And you can see it's already starting to form. You can see you have that nice butter, so it's really nice and moving around. And that's another little indicator that it's ready to go. So I'm gonna let that set for just a minute. Gorgeous. You see those beautiful cut chives, right? Looking very delicious. And so I can see I got this beautiful, nice set, even layer of crepe. And so I'm gonna take that large metal spatula, right? And I'm just gonna get on the edge here. I'm just gonna kind of get underneath on one side. And then what I like to do is kind of take at the edge and then flip her on over, just like that. And so you can see because we have that nice sort of medium heat, I got this really nice kind of blonde looking crepe, right? It's not too brown, but it's looking absolutely delicious and it's nice and thin, okay? And so what I'm gonna do is once that first side is nice and set, that second side doesn't need that much time, okay? You can see it's nice and kind of set right there. And so what I like to do is kind of come on over and land that crepe on my plate and just let it cool down. You can see it's nice and thin. Look at that, gorgeous. Perfect. And then you can keep that heat on the crepe and you can move on right to your next one, okay? That heat is perfect, exactly where you want it to be. So grabbing that second knob of butter, putting it right in the center, using that paper towel to your advantage. You're just gonna go ahead and make sure that's nice and evenly distributed, right? Kind of soaping up any of that excess. And then coming on over with that second ladle. Need 3 crepes for this, right? So we're just gonna do the 3 crepes. And if you have any extra, go ahead and cook that off. This will be a delicious snack in just a minute. I know the DJs like to snack on those crepes if we make any extras. And so same, getting those edges, making sure my crepe has no stickage, right? Getting nice and set. Grabbing that offset spatula, getting underneath one side of that crepe. Those beautiful chives, and just giving it a quick flip. And finishing it, just letting that second side get nice and cook through, and voila. Letting it kind of set, bring it on over to my pan, and saying hello to its friends. And you guys got yourself 3 beautiful crepes, ready to be beef Wellington. Look at that, gorgeous, nice and thin, excellent. Let's get into wrapping that beef, okay? So go ahead and now we're gonna grab that puff pastry dough, right? So we got that puff pastry dough. It was in the fridge this entire time, right? We talked about that earlier. Go ahead and grab that and let that temper for just a minute, okay? So we want it to be cold, but we do wanna be able to move it around. So tempering it right before you need it kind of helps you make it a little bit more malleable, a little bit more easy to roll, okay? All right, go ahead and grab that plastic wrap, right? And a really nice kind of fun little trick is when you're ever rolling out a piece of plastic wrap and you want it to be really nice and taut, go ahead and just moisten that surface just a little bit. And what happens is as you roll that plastic wrap out, it kind of adheres to that surface, and that way you have a nice, even surface. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna do 2 pieces, right? Just for extra support. And you can see, because I have that nice moisture on there, what I got is just this beautiful flat piece of plastic wrap, okay? And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab our crepes and we're just gonna lay these crepes just like so. And you're just gonna kind of get a nice and layered, kind of like shingling it a little bit, okay? We have these beautiful crepes. So we wanna make a nice shingle so we got enough surface area to really wrap up that beef. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna kind of trim it just ever so slightly, okay? And these make for great snacks. These like little crepe trims, they're great for snacking. So you wanna just trim off a little bit, just kind of getting the edges here, right? Making sure it fits with that plastic wrap. So you're making a circle into a square, just some basic geometry, right? So now we have this beautiful sort of square crepe, right? And then go ahead and grab that duxelle, right? That beautiful mushroom duxelle. And we're going to smear most of this onto our crepes. So what I do is kind of take that spatula and just kind of smear it onto our beautiful crepe square. And this is just gonna kind of coat over our beef, right? And so using that spatula edge to kind of get a nice even layer. And that spatula is going to help you get all of that good stuff, right? Kind of keeping that crepe nice and taut and just spreading this as evenly as possible, okay? We're going to use all of this, okay? So just kind of think about that as you're kind of spreading it around. You're going to use all of this duxelle. It's nice and measured out for our Wellington. All right. Gorgeous. Smelling so good. And if you've never made duxelle, always give it a quick taste. Taste all of that beautiful sherry, those nice kind of delicious mushrooms. This is like a really nice way to make like a vegetarian style pate if you're ever having like a cheese board or something. This is a really nice alternative for your vegetarian friends to kind of enjoy that kind of texture as well, okay? So you see I have this beautiful kind of layer of that duxelle, trying to get it nice and even, using the back of that spatula to kind of thin out my layers, just like so. Beautiful. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna grab that steak out of your fridge. And now you can see it's nice and cold, right? So you got that nice duxelle and a nice even layer. And I'm gonna go ahead and rotate this crepe, all right? So I got my nice long width, right? So as I roll this, and I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna grab that steak and I'm just gonna put it right into the center, okay? So it's nice and cold, it should be cold to the touch. But you can see what we got going on here is this nice, beautiful, even layer of crepe, and you can see that it's gonna be able to fold around, right? And so what you're gonna do is you're really gonna utilize that plastic wrap, okay? You're gonna make that plastic wrap work for you. So coming on over here, I got both ends here, right, from the back, and I'm simply rolling those crepes onto my steak and really utilizing that plastic wrap to roll those crepes for me, okay? So coming around here and taking that top part so it doesn't get caught in my roll and making sure that the seams hit each other at the end and making sure that plastic wrap is not within that roll, right, because you don't want it to get caught up. And then you're gonna take it and you're just going to twist like a little candy pop, okay? And so you can see what happens is those crepes naturally kind of roll and adhere to that plastic wrap, okay? And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna pop this into our fridge to cool and chill just a second longer, okay? Perfect. And so now we have our beef nice and rolled up, and we're just letting everything kind of hold together, right? We're letting that duxelle, kind of using that as a glue to glue that crepe to our steak. And so while that's kind of chilling one more time, now we're gonna get into rolling our puff pastry dough, okay? And so grabbing those sheets, they're getting nice and tempered, right? We're gonna just need one of these sheets, okay? So if you have about a pound of puff pastry dough, they usually come in about 2 sheets. And for this application, we're just gonna need one of those, okay? So coming on over here, and what's really great about these puff pastry sheets is they kind of come nice and folded. So you can kind of pull them out. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna flour my surface, right? Don't forget we have that 1/4 cup of flour. And I'm just gonna give that a nice little flouring, just so that nothing sticks, right? Just a little bit. And then grabbing that first sheet, and we're just going to open that up. And what's so convenient about this is that they're actually nice and cut, ready to go. What I like to do is I like to see which side is more heavily floured and put that more heavily floured part on the flour part, because flour sometimes will stop your egg yolk from working, okay? And so I can see my puff pastry dough is looking pretty good, but I want it to be a little bit longer, okay, just so that I have a little bit more rolling. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna kind of roll this out just ever so slightly, just so I have a little bit of a thinner piece of pastry, about 1/4 inch, okay? And also that length, just to make sure, add a little flour to your rolling pin as well. And you want to make sure it's long enough so that you can actually get a nice wrap, all right? You want to make sure it's long enough to actually wrap around your beautiful little beef Wellington baby. All right, so I'm feeling pretty good about that, right? It was kind of the same length of the board, so we're kind of using that board as like our indicator, making sure nothing gets stuck there, and looking really good right there. Cool. All right. So now we have this beautiful pastry dough ready to rock, and a little bit of flour. And we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna grab that little welly again, okay? So now we have this cute little, this little chunker right here, okay? And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna unwrap that beautiful little Wellington. It's had a minute to sit in that fridge. And now you can see it's really easy to get that out with those twisty ties, right? We didn't actually seal it all the way. So you just kind of open that up. And we're just going to put that right into the center of our pastry dough. All right, so you can see, got this beautiful, nice wrapped pastry dough. And then what we're gonna do is those egg yolks that you saved earlier. All right, so you can see that plastic wrap has really tightened the edges, right? So you got this nice kind of already formed kind of cylinder, right? That plastic wrap really utilizing that shape of that beef. And so now we have it right dab in the center of our beautiful pastry situation, right? Our puff pastry. And then go ahead and grab that pastry brush, right? That one we used earlier, with that little bit of that tablespoon of that egg yolk, right? We're gonna use this as an egg wash. And what you're gonna do is you're just gonna get as much of this egg wash onto this in a nice even layer. And this is gonna be the glue, okay? So you wanna make sure that all little pieces, all these little edges get that beautiful egg wash, and that's what's gonna keep your Wellington nice and wrapped. And then making sure you keep a little bit for the top, right? Because as you egg wash pastry dough, what happens is that fat makes that really nice, rich, sort of crusted situation, right? So you wanna make sure you keep a little bit for the top. And so you can see I got it nice and glued up. And we're gonna go ahead and just kind of like similarly to that plastic wrap, taking that puff pastry and just rolling that beef. And you can see we had a nice length for that, so we got that beautiful seam going on. All right, and so you're gonna land it right onto that seam, right? You can see I got it right on the seam. And so I got a total 360 on my wrap, okay? And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna grab those scissors and you're just gonna trim off any of that excess, okay? So I'm just kind of trimming off just a little bit on the edges here. You can see that's where it starts. So you see I have a little bit, about 1.5 inches left of dough to kind of tuck it, but you don't need all of it, okay? You want about 1.5 inches just so you can tuck it. And then what I like to do is I kind of fold it down, kind of like you're wrapping a present, okay? And you're gonna fold it onto itself, 1 and then 2, and then you're gonna tuck it underneath itself, all right? Just like you're wrapping a present. So I'm coming on over here, I'll show you guys one more time. Just giving yourself about 1.5 inches, taking, squeezing both sides, and I go 1, then 2, and then I tuck it under itself. All right, so you can see the seams are all nice, and you got this nice, beautiful little present, just like that, okay? And what you can do with this is you can actually make croissants with this, so that's kind of fun. Any of that excess dough, roll a couple pieces of chocolate in there, and you got yourself some breakfast. All right, cool. So now I have my beautiful Wellington ready to rock. Grab that sheet with that aluminum, and go ahead and grab a little bit of that Pam spray, right? And we're going to just get this nice, and a little vegetable oil there. If you don't have the spray, you can go ahead and take that butter and take the stick and just rub it onto this sheet, all right? Not too complicated, just need a little bit of fat on that tray, okay? And we're gonna go ahead and just land our little baby with the seam side down, right? Now all the seams are down, and pop that right onto our tray, okay? And so now we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of score this. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna kind of help release any sort of extra steam. All right, you can see a 360 view of that beautiful Wellington. Look at that. nice and plump. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my knife and I'm gonna score this, okay? So I'm gonna get this a little bit closer to the camera. You can see I'm just gonna take it and I'm gonna just lightly graze my knife over the top of this pastry. And you can see I'm trying to make this really nice and consistent, right? Just keeping the spaces in between my slices nice and consistent. And you can see I'm just kind of dragging the knife over it. I'm not making these cuts too deep, okay? And this is just gonna give us, one, just a beautiful design, right? And two, it's just gonna help release any of that steam so we don't get in any big air bubbles, right? We wanna make sure everything gets nice and cooked and that pastry dough is allowed to have that nice kind of crust, okay? So coming on over here, going all the way down, making sure that whole Wellington is nice and scored. And then once you've done that, just finishing off these lines here, grab the rest of that egg wash and we're just gonna give this a little bit of an egg wash bath, okay? Coming on over here, making sure all sides get that. So now we got the insides and now we got the outsides, and that's also gonna kind of help it seal, okay? Your seams are down, so as this pastry dough kind of fluffs up, it'll stay nice and locked because you have that gravity using you. You're using that gravity to make sure that that pastry dough stays nice and on the meat. All right, and so there you have it. Your nice, beautiful beef Wellington. And you're gonna go ahead and we're gonna pop that into our oven and we'll see you in about 30 to 35 minutes. Now that our beef Wellington is in the oven getting nice and cooked, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna work on our sauce, okay? So go ahead and grab those button mushrooms. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna give them a quick wipe, all right? And so when you clean mushrooms, you don't wanna add too much water to it, right? They're kind of like little sponges. And so what I like to do to just kind of get any of that excess dirt off, I come on over here and I grab a paper towel and I get it just a little bit wet, right? Just so it has a little bit of moisture in it. And I'm just gonna rub those mushrooms, and you can see it's just getting some of that excess dirt off, okay? And you don't want to get them too wet, but you do want to get some of that dirt off. And so what I do is I kind of just use that shape of that mushroom to kind of rub some of that excess dirt off, right? And this is kind of how you should do with all mushrooms. You don't really want to drench them in water because they just soak water up so easily and you lose a lot of that flavor, and then you end up having to cook out all that moisture anyways, all right? And so now I have these nice, clean, beautiful mushrooms going on. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna trim off just a little bit of that stem because this mushroom is nice and edible all the way through. But I'm just gonna trim off some of this sort of excess kind of fibrous part right here, okay? And then what we're gonna do is, this is also great if you ever wanna keep these, what you can do is you can freeze these and kind of accumulate a lot of these mushrooms, and you can make a beautiful mushroom stock with these stems, all right? So you can really utilize that mushroom and that mushroom flavor with those stems. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab these mushrooms and we're just gonna slice them, okay? And so what I like to do is I like to just slice off a little bit, just like that. And then what you got is you got a nice even surface, right? So that mushroom doesn't roll around like these mushrooms are rolling around. Because you sliced off that little bit, now you got a nice stable mushroom to work with. And then what you're gonna do is you're just gonna simply, just like we did the chives, kind of slicing forward. Gonna slice these just as thin as possible. And you can see we're really just gonna utilize all of that mushroom, stem and all. And then just like before, slicing that mushroom just a little bit, getting that nice, even surface so that as you slice that mushroom, you got a very stable product to work with. All right, come on over here, getting that slice and keeping my fingertips nice and curled and just making sure that I got a beautiful sliced mushroom. And at this point, I can already smell my puff pastry. It already smells like butter in the air. It's one of my favorite smells. It's like smelling croissants. It's just absolutely insanely delicious. All right, so we got our beautiful mushrooms nice and sliced here. And so we're gonna kind of caramelize them, okay? So using that same pot that we made that beurre monte, go ahead and give yourself another little pat of butter, all right, another little tablespoon of butter. And we're just going to caramelize these mushrooms in butter, okay? So turning this on, medium heat, I'm gonna go ahead and melt that butter along with getting my pan nice and warmed up. And at this point, go ahead and grab that Madeira, right, that cognac, and we're gonna get these nice and caramelized, and then we're gonna deglaze with this nice, beautiful, sort of fortified wine, okay? It's gonna bring a lot of sweetness to it, gonna bring kind of that baseline acidity to our dish, and that's gonna really kind of help cut through that beef, because that beef is gonna be so delicious, so buttery. And so this sauce is gonna kind of really electrify that beef Wellington, okay? And so I'm coming on over here, my butter is nice and melted, and I'm gonna go ahead and add my mushrooms. to that butter. Boom. And because we made that beurre monte in this pan already, it's a great way to kind of utilize your pan, right? In my kitchen, I'm all about using less dishes, right? We're really considering that dishwasher as a friend and making sure that I only have the dishes that I need to use, really. All right, so we're coming on over here, and now I got these beautiful mushrooms, and I'm just gonna coat them in that butter. And I'm gonna season these just a little bit, okay? And the reason why we're gonna season these just a little bit is that we're gonna actually add that truffle jus to this. And that truffle jus is beef stock that's been reduced down. So it's nice and concentrated, and it has a really, really nice amount of seasoning to it. So at this point, we only wanna add just a little bit, but we do wanna add a little bit of seasoning as a layer, okay? So you can see I can add maybe like a half teaspoon, maybe. And we're gonna go ahead and just let these get nice and caramelized, okay? So you can see that water is starting to evaporate. We're getting a really nice fond on the bottom of our pan. And that's just all flavor, okay? Grab that Madeira, and we're gonna do about 3 tablespoons, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and eye that out. We're just gonna pop that, and it should sound pretty exciting. You can see about 3 tablespoons in there, and we're just gonna let that reduce down until it's au sec, okay? So this is deglazing, so we're deglazing our pan, and we are just letting this get down to au sec, which is almost dry, and we're just letting that mushroom Madeira flavor just kind of really develop. Okay. Beautiful. It smells so good in here. Roasty mushrooms and a delicious Madeira deglaze is one of my favorites. And so we're just going to let this reduce down. Gorgeous. So I'm getting that nice au sec. It's kind of thickening with the starch from that mushroom, right? Got this nice thickening happening right here. And it's just smelling absolutely divine in here. And so as that's kind of coming on over to au sec, I'm going to go ahead and grab that truffle jus, right? So I got this beautiful truffle jus coming at you. This beautiful truffle jus coming at you. And we're going to go ahead, and once that is nice and au sec, we're going to go ahead and add our jus to this beautiful, delicious mushroom, okay? What's going on over here? And just making sure I get all of that goodness. And you're not gonna use all of this sauce, so you go ahead and keep that jar, because this is a great way to kind of store that mushroom jus that you've now made. And then at this point, because that jus is already nice and viscous, all you really have to do is just bring it up to a nice simmer, and that's it, all right? So we're bringing it on to a nice simmer, making sure those mushroom flavors are really developing with that jus. And you can see that consistency of that jus is just flawless, right? So you bring it up to a nice simmer, and what you're left with is just this beautiful sauce ready to coat that beef Wellington. Gorgeous. All right, that's our 30-minute timer, so we're gonna go ahead and check in our Wellington. I'm gonna come on down here. I'm going downstairs to my Wellington, okay? And, oh, yes, so we are 30 minutes, and look at that beautiful Wellington. You can see we got that nice shape from that puff pastry, right? And because we got that nice aluminum foil, it's very easy to move that piece. But we got this nice golden brown pastry dough. We're gonna have a beautiful medium rare beef tenderloin going on. Got that beautiful scoring, and we got that nice kind of enriched dough because we add a little bit of that egg wash to the top of our beef Wellington. And so, just like any sort of roast, you want to make sure you let that beef rest. Okay, so we're gonna let this rest for about 10 minutes. Okay, so we're just gonna kind of stare at it, admire it, sing songs to it for about 10 minutes. Okay, so we'll see you guys right back in about 10 minutes. Okay. So the Wellington's been resting for about 10 minutes, and so now that our beef is nice and rested, we are ready to carve this, and we are ready to eat this Wellington, okay? And so I'm gonna come on over and bring this Wellington over to my board, okay? And the best way to cut this Wellington is with a serrated knife, okay? That's kind of the best way, kind of when you cook any sort of, or cut any sort of bread, right? So I'm gonna pop this right into the center of my board, okay? I'm gonna use that serrated knife, right? So that serrated just means it's got those nice teeth going on right there. And when you're cutting a beef Wellington, you want to serve it pretty thick, okay? You don't really want to slice beef Wellington super thin. And because we're using that nice beef tenderloin, we can kind of give yourself a nicer, bigger cut of meat. And the reason why we don't want to cut it too thin is because we don't really want to disturb that pastry dough too much. And so with a size like this for this little guy, for about 2 people, the best kind of move with that is just cut it down the middle, and then we're gonna trim off the sides, okay? So I'm coming on over here and really using that serrated knife to saw down and give myself that nice clean cut. And we're just gonna make it go all the way down. And we're just gonna check out this baby. Oh man, look at that perfect medium rare. We got that nice crust happening. We got that beautiful duxelle. It's kind of circling over. We got that nice crepe that's gonna kind of help keep all those juices nice together, okay? And so once you've gotten your 2 little portions, all you need to do is come on over, and we're gonna do about 1 inch worth of that beef Wellington, all right? So same idea. You're really using the teeth to kind of help you guide down and get those nice clean cuts, all right? And then what you've got is this beautiful Wellington steak. So I'm gonna show off this piece right here, just like that, kind of show that off. I'm gonna go ahead and grab a plate, right? And I'm going to land this beef Wellington onto my plate and really show off that beautiful crust, that nice duxelle we got going on, okay? So you can see I got this beautiful, beautiful Wellington, just like so. You can see that crust with that egg wash really held on, so we got this beautiful, nice crust going on. And we got this second piece ready for someone to snack on. And so now we have this beautiful Wellington right, and now I'm just gonna finish it off. So grabbing that jus, I'm just gonna go ahead and give myself, and if your jus cooled down, make sure this jus is nice and hot, okay? And we're gonna go ahead and we're just going to give this Wellington just a little bit more love. We're gonna let that kind of cascade off our beautiful Wellington, okay? And then just for a little pop of color, all right, we're just gonna add a little bit of that chive, all right? We got a little bit of that chive going on. And we got ourselves this beautiful Wellington. And as chefs, we're just gonna clean up that plate, right? Make sure that's nice and gorgeous. And so we got this beautiful Wellington. And of course, we're gonna add a little bit of sea salt, right? We wanna make sure we finish off our nice cut of meat with a little bit of that Balinese truffle salt, right? Look at that, gorgeous. All right, so what you got here is this beautiful beef Wellington ready to go. I got this angle right here, just really showing off that beautiful pastry crust. You can see because we had that aluminum on the bottom, that bottom got nice and just gorgeously crusted. And here you are. You got yourself a beautiful beef Wellington for you to enjoy. You got that beautiful, gorgeous beef Wellington. We got that beautiful crust on the bottom here, just looking absolutely stunning. You can see that gorgeous scoring on the top to make it just to elevate that beef Wellington just a little bit. Okay, and at this point, this is ready to enjoy with that candy cat mushroom. And so please enjoy that Wellington, and we'll see you again next time.